Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Sunday Scaries skill sessions. So earlier this week, I asked for y'all to send me some feedback around what you're wanting to see more of on this page. And I got a lot of awesome ideas. Thank y'all so much for sending those to me. And so lots of stuff to go to, and I want to spend individual time on each of the things that were requested. But one of the things that, as I was kind of imagining how I would talk about each of those requests, one thing that I started to realize was that really all of them would first require a better understanding of what's going on in the brain. And so to be able to understand those functions and those systems can be really helpful, because if you know what's going on in your brain, then you're much better equipped to then make the best choice for coping with whatever is happening for you. So that being said, I want to acknowledge that my main goal with this page is to make psychology, neurology, therapy, all of those things to feel more approachable and not intimidating. And so I really try to stay away from any sort of technical jargon and things like that. However, when we're talking about the brain, that's a little bit harder to avoid. So I am going to try to break this down in the best way possible, but please, if anything doesn't quite make sense, or if you need a little bit more information, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all might have in connection to this stuff. So in order to talk about the brain, I'm going to use Dr. Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. He is a really great resource. He has a book called Mindsight that I highly recommend that will talk more about what I'll be sharing today in this video. So he uses the hand as a model of the brain. So if you have if you put your thumb in the middle of your palm and wrap your fingers around it like so, that's going to be what we'll use to represent the brain. And if we start with the wrist, so this will basically be like the spinal cord. Your palm is going to represent your brain stem. Now, what your brain stem is kind of known for, and again, I'm really oversimplifying things here, but that's where the whole fight or flight response exists. So if your brain has determined that there's a threat, then that system's going to kick into fight or flight so that you can run away, fight something, so that you can survive. Okay, so that exists in the brainstem. Then we have your thumb, which represents the limbic system, specifically the hippocampus and the amygdala. And for the sake of what we're talking about today, the main role of the limbic system is for creating emotion. I'm going to be talking specifically about anxiety today, so I won't go all the way into every single thing. So for the sake of talking about anxiety, the limbic system creates emotion. Then you have your fingers here that will represent the cortex. This part of your knuckles will represent the frontal cortex. Your fingernails will be the prefrontal cortex. And you see that the limbic system kind of sits right underneath that prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex specifically is responsible for 9 main functions, but there are 2 that I feel are really relevant for talking about anxiety. So I'm just going to focus on those 2 today. And so the first one of those 2 is the ability to regulate your body, specifically your nervous system. Now, in my very first Sunday Scaries video, I spent some time talking about the nervous system. So if you want to check that out, you can get a little bit more information. For today, I will just kind of sum it up by saying that the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system, you can think of those as like the brakes and the accelerator. So the brakes are the parasympathetic, accelerator, sympathetic. Essentially, one system is going to rev you up, sympathetic, and the other is going to calm you down, parasympathetic. Okay, so that's function 1. Function 2 is the ability to calm fear. So the limbic system is responsible for creating emotion. Okay, fear is included in that. Anxiety is just a branch of fear. So this prefrontal cortex has fibers that connect to this limbic system. And those fibers can release a chemical that's called GABA. Okay, GABA is an inhibitory peptide All that means is that it helps to slow down the action of the neurons that it binds with. Okay, so what you need to know is that if this system is revving up fear, then when this is online and doing what it's supposed to do, those fibers pump the GABA into the limbic system so that those neurons can settle and the fear can subsequently settle. Right, so both of those things are really important when it comes to managing anxiety, soothing your body, soothing fear. So we need the function of the prefrontal cortex in order to cope with anxiety well. The problem with that is that when our body or our brain has determined that there's a threat around us, it activates the brainstem and the limbic system. They start working together and firing and firing and firing until eventually you flip your lid. That's what Dan Siegel says, and I like it, so I'm gonna use it. So now all of those important functions that we just described are no longer available to you. They've gone offline. So let's say you work with a therapist who uses a cognitive behavioral approach, a purist cognitive behavioral approach. CBT is a fantastic technique. I use it a lot myself. However, if that's all you use, you can face some challenges because so CBT is all about focusing on cognitions, aka thoughts. And when you're here, all those functions that you have that help you really pay attention and break down those thoughts, they're now gone. So if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety and you've gotten to the point where that lid's been flipped and you're just trying to think your way out of your anxiety, you're probably not going to be super successful. So what I like to recommend for people is to find a way to soothe your body first, because that's going to allow all those functions to come back on. Once they're online, your brain is going to do what it's already meant to do. It's going to start pumping that GABA. It's going to activate those brakes, the parasympathetic system, and you can start to calm down. So I'll share ways to do that in just a minute. But first, I also like to tell people who struggle with anxiety to educate the people around you about this. So your roommate, your partner, your family, whomever, so that they can help offer assistance if they see you here. You know, it's pretty obvious when you have flipped your lid, because you go from being a pretty reasonable person to now all of a sudden you're freaking out. And so that can look like bursts of anger, or it could look like panic attacks, but you tend to know when you're there. So they can help catch that for you and intervene with coping skills to help calm you back down. In one of my previous videos, I shared one of these techniques that's really great for bringing all this back online, which is ice. So a shift in temperature is something that activates that parasympathetic nervous system, the brakes. So if you put ice on the back of your neck, you'll start to notice pretty quickly that your breathing's going to return to normal, your heart rate's going to slow down, and that is this happening. That's all of this stuff returning back online. Okay, that's the parasympathetic nervous system at work. So ice is a great, quick, and easy one. If you don't have ice, deep diaphragmatic breathing. So there are about 1 million YouTube videos that you can find on this, but doing some kind of breathing technique is another great way to calm your body and get all those functions back online. You can also go through previous videos I've shared. There are a couple different techniques that I've talked about that help do this for you, but those are just two of the quickest and easiest ways to do that. Then once you've soothed your body and those functions are now available to you again, then you can start to do the cognitive behavioral techniques. So then maybe you can journal or, think about your thoughts, but until you calm that body, you're going to have a really hard time doing that. So that would be step one before you do anything else. So quick recap. If this is your brain, we've got your spinal cord, palm is the brain stem, thumb is the limbic system, fingers is the cortex, specifically the frontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex helps us do things naturally. There are functions in our brain that can help us cope with anxiety, regulating our body and soothing fear. So two important functions that help us when we're feeling anxious. So we have to be able to catch ourselves if we're here and soothe the body to bring it back online in order for your brain to be able to do what it's designed to do, which is calm you down when there isn't really a threat around. So hopefully y'all can take that understanding and use that for the next time you're feeling anxiety start to rev up. Do something to calm your body first, and maybe then start to use other skills that you might have in your arsenal. And again, like I said, if any of that felt confusing, then please reach out to me. I'm happy to explain more. And I will start to get into the specific questions that y'all asked in the next coming videos.